that we're going to help you get everything you want out of your business. That's awesome. Most people's identity is 100% wrapped up in their business, and they don't know who they are or what they want without that business. And so what we need to do is tease that apart and figure out what is it that you want for your life so that you can get that from your business.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show that tells the stories of renegade entrepreneurs who bet it all on their passion. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, and I'm an entrepreneurial evangelist. I'm on a mission to build a community of business owners just like you who don't see their reflection in day-to-day life. Each week, I sit down with a visionary entrepreneur who saw the world as it could be and couldn't help but take action. How could a teen mother work her way into being a successful CEO, author, and podcaster? The answer is to hashtag keep going. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Also, sharing this podcast with friends will ensure we keep bringing on more and more interesting guests. Today's guest is Mari Tautimes. Mari is a speaker, EOS Implementer, podcaster, and most recently, the author of hashtag keep going, from 15-year-old mom to successful CEO and entrepreneur. This was a truly fantastic conversation with an experienced and high-energy entrepreneur who had a ton of wisdom to share. We get into all sorts of good stuff in this one, not just about how to succeed, but also how to define success for you and your understanding what it will take to get there. If you have an introspective bone in your body, this is the episode for you. I'm joined today with Mari Tautimes. I think I got that right,
You
Mari?
got it.
Mari, how you doing today?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited about this conversation for like a bunch of reasons, but not the least of which I just love your energy. We've only spoken for maybe 15 minutes total, 20 maybe. And just every time we talk, I just feel energy and I just feel snap, crackle, pops. So Mari does a lot of different stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass it to you, Mari, and you can kind of give us the high level of your world. So what is it that you do?
So I am actually an EOS Implementer, which means that I help entrepreneurial companies run on a very specific system that helps them get everything they want out of their business. That's like my day job, and I love that. Mm-hmm. And then I'm equally passionate about this other side of my business, which is called hashtag keep going. It's a book that I wrote. I have it here. Hashtag keep going. And it's my personal story of going from a 15-year-old teenage mom to a successful entrepreneur and CEO. Ultimately sold our company in 2020 for $16 million. So have been everything from an administrative assistant all the way up through that CEO seat, and now an entrepreneur on my own outside of the family business. But the story is really more about what's going on personally and professionally through that entire journey, and really just trying to set an example for other people of what's possible, because my story starts out in a physically abusive relationship on welfare with a Mexican national father for my baby's daddy, kind of a thing, all the way to educating myself and constantly learning and growing, and then being able to turn around and teach other people how they can do the same thing. So no matter where you are in your life or in your entrepreneurial journey, this book covers exactly how to just make it like one step at a time.
Wow. There's so much there. First of all, I think that's amazing. Author, EOS Implementer. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard EOS a dozen times already. By the time this show comes out, the book will be available. You'll be able to find the link below. Where do you even start with that? I mean, typically I ask for people's entrepreneur stories, their origin stories rather. And, you mentioned in the title of the book, you had your child at 15 years old. And I think there's just something so impressive, and I can't wait to hear more about it, when somebody has those types of real life thrown at them and they still, by one way or another, end up, choosing their own destiny through entrepreneurship. So maybe if you could kind of talk to us a little bit about how that kind of came to be.
Yeah. So my dad, it's funny because when I was pregnant, my parents were going through a really tough time in their lives. So, which now as a 41-year-old mom, I can appreciate maybe where they were, like going through bankruptcy and all. They had their own stuff. So to have a 15-year-old come home and say, by the way, fun fact, I'm pregnant. I'm sure that was tremendous hardship for them. And so at the time I had to get qualified for welfare because they didn't have anything. My parents were in between jobs. So that's 15. By the time I was 17, my dad had been in a motorcycle accident and was placed through a temp agency and an insurance agency. And he ended up in this really strange position where he was able to buy this insurance agency. And so he bought the insurance company and then invited me in as a receptionist. By that time, I was already a receptionist at a car dealership. So he's like, if you can be a receptionist there, you can be a receptionist here. And we started in this crappy little house converted into an office in Central Phoenix. Like, it was super ghetto, but it was our little insurance agency. My twin brother joined the agency about a year after I did. And we just started kind of growing up in the business. I didn't start to realize the opportunity in front of me until I was about 22, 23. And what happened was my dad was like, okay, you guys just run the business. And he went and bought a house in Sedona and decided that he wasn't going to be in the business anymore. And he was done working, which was really premature because we were like 23. But what happened was we really woke up. I think my brother and I were like, oh, and we went from being like a passenger, you know, in a car to being the driver. And that's such a different experience. And so we were like, okay. And we started learning about the levers that made the business grow and go. And so then he and I really kind of woke up and became much more intentional about what we were doing in the business. And so we ended up splitting it into two parts. My brother ran all of Medicare. I ran all of long-term care. It's insurance products. It's very sexy stuff. But what I want to say about that is that was our opportunity. You know, it wasn't sexy. It was senior healthcare insurance products and long-term care insurance, nursing home healthcare, that sort of thing. But I really believe in this concept of bloom where you are planted. Like, that's where we were planted. That was the opportunity. And we did everything we could. As soon as we became conscious in our 20s, we did everything we could to maximize that opportunity. And then we did that for the next, 15 years of just, grind and grind and grind, ultimately to the point where we, went from this 3 little person insurance agency to being in a position to sell it like we did in 2020.
And so early on, you're working with your brother, you're working for your dad, you've got these challenging life circumstances. Did you run into the same troubles that you hear from a lot of other people that work with family? Did you guys have struggles and butting heads, or do you feel that you guys were able to kind of fight your way out of a foxhole from the circumstance? How did you guys work through it?
I think we were incredibly fortunate that my dad let us learn and grow. Like, he didn't micromanage us. I don't know if it was like he was an okay manager or he was just so busy that it was like sink or swim. So we were all in our own lanes automatically. So we were never kind of crossing into each other's lanes. We were really good at healthy conflict. We were really good at making the issues. So I always use my pen. Like, the pen is the issue. It's all about the pen. It's not between you and me. It's not personal. So we would like battle, to the mat about issues, but it was never personal. And I don't know how that came to be. I don't know if it was just my dad's leadership or it's just how we operated, but we were like attorneys that would, battle it out in the courtroom. And then as soon as that was over, we'd be like, hey, do you want to get some lunch? It wasn't ever personal. But I'd say the other thing too, it's kind of unfortunate about my family, is that we don't have the same kind of closeness and connection that other people do outside of work. So work was our connection. So I think it's a little bit different if you are constantly, like, you're spending your weekends and your evenings and every holiday together with your family and you're working with them. I think that's really, really close. We didn't have that. My brother and I ended up participating more in our spouses' lives, and my parents kind of always did their thing. They always had a place somewhere else. So I think that created just enough separation that it was very functional for us.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And as an EOS implementer, I'm sure you'll follow better than me. But the pen, right? My partners in my first business were both in the military. And so we had this thing where there were 3 of us and there was just never a fight. It was one person says yes, one person says no, the other person says yes. It's fucking yes. That's what it is. Right. We're going for beers. We're good, right? And I think a lot of what EOS and what any really good management kind of structure kind of provides, whether you're talking about core values, mission statement, SOPs, what you're doing is you're building these structures within the business so that it doesn't feel so personal when you go like, hey, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. And so commonly, I think family has to be the hardest case example of that. So for you guys to be able to catch on to that so quickly, I guess you've already kind of attributed it, but that's just so impressive. The second point that you made a minute ago about being bloom where you're planted, I think that's a really great phrase. I've never heard that before. Do you feel like you were an entrepreneur or you were entrepreneurial before you were planted in this circumstance? Are you able to kind of know, or was it just too young?
I don't think I knew at the time, but I
Yeah.
was asked this question recently and I really had to think about it. And what I realized was that it is very ingrained. I think it is who I would have been
Mhm.
anyways. Maybe I would have been entrepreneurial in someone else's business, which is perfectly okay. I just want to say that for everybody that's like, I want to start my own business. Maybe you should be entrepreneurial in someone else's entrepreneurial business.
Sure.
That's okay too. It's like there's a lot of risk that goes into entrepreneurship and not everybody has that risk tolerance. But I think that it is something that is how you're intrinsically wired. And so, just like so many other Americans, my grandparents on both sides of my family are immigrants, one from the Netherlands, the other from Portugal, from the Azores Islands. And I do believe that things that happen in our previous generations' history do get imprinted sort of in our DNA,
Yeah.
very quite literally. And I think that there's something to that immigrant past that says, there's got to be a better way. And I'm willing to risk everything I know and all of my comforts and all of my familiarity and certainty and give that up to go somewhere new to find something better. So I think that that's sort of planted in us. And then fast forward to my parents, they were both pastors in the United Methodist Church, which I think being a pastor is very entrepreneurial, a lot more than I think people understand. But also my parents weren't able to get everything they wanted for their life out of that. And so they left the ministry and then had these other opportunities. But what I always saw my parents do is constantly learn and grow and reach. Like there's just this constant, like there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And I think that that mindset is just entrepreneurial. And this, I'm just not satisfied until I get right over there. And any entrepreneur knows that right over there is a perpetual thing. Like as soon as you get here, you're like, just right over there. So I think there's always this balance of contentment and drive. Like, how can something I'm working on right now is I've definitely got the science of achievement down. I definitely don't have the art of fulfillment down. And it's very hard for me to feel fulfilled because of that moving goalpost of like, oh, I got here. I was just talking to my coach yesterday. I have a coach. I think everybody should have a coach, a life coach. And I was talking to him yesterday and I was like, sold a business, had a big exit, wrote a book, being published with Forbes. And I'm like, I don't know. His name's Shashin. He's amazing. I'm like, I don't know, Shashin. I'm like, nothing feels different. Yeah, he's badass.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, nothing feels different. And he's like, really? And so we're diving into that right now. And he's like, okay, so this book is #keep going. He's like, I want you to start writing the next book, which has more to do with just being. Like, how can you be fulfilled and be and things be enough kind of where you are? And I told him yesterday, I said, Shashin, I thought I knew what I wanted, and now I realize I don't know what I want. I want to discover what it is that I want and why I want it. Because the way that I'm tracking right now is that there will never be enough dollars. There will never be enough accomplishments. You never reach it. And then that's not a place to live either. So that's what I'm working on next.
I think I've said this before, but one of my interesting moments in the last few years is I was reading through trashy news and I saw Ben Affleck standing outside, like smoking a cigarette, looking terrible. And I looked at my wife and I go, I think I'm objectively happier than Ben Affleck. And that was like a big moment for me. But I guess, so when you're talking though, the thing that I notice, I think a lot of people can identify with this, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but this culture of success versus this culture of being, right? I think though that most people try to go about it the opposite way. Or many, many people are like, well, first I need to have my family and then I need to have my relationships and then I'm going to have my hobbies and then I'm going to get a job or I'm going to get educated to then go get a career. And I think it's just so admirable that given the entire, so how many weights were on that side of the scale for you so early that easily you had everyone in the world would have surrounded you and congratulated you for taking a different path, right? And you still chose to go out and succeed first. I just think that's very commendable. And I think You're right. I identify with that as well. Is there's never going to be whatever you sell the business for, you can start another business that you can sell for more. There's always going to be another thing, a bigger number, a new conquest. And I think that ultimately it's the folks that can just be happy being that I've seen that are the most stable, and I know a lot of
Right.
entrepreneurs, right? Um,
Right.
so how do you find stability? Do you have hobbies? What are you doing? I think you roll jujitsu, don't you?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
try. I haven't been more recently. I
Yeah.
did a lot more last year.
Yeah.
You can tell by my nails that I'm not doing jujitsu at the moment because you can't go onto the mat like that.
Yeah.
But my kids are doing jujitsu right now. No,
Hmm.
I don't. I put myself right back into the same mode that I was in before. I
Hmm.
hustle. Like that's the only thing that I really know how to do. And so it's so interesting because you think, okay, I'm going to leave this work life that has this certain work life balance. But if you're not thoughtful and intentional, you'll just turn around and recreate it in your next life, in your next version, your next iteration of whatever it is that you're doing.
Hmm.
And so that's why I say, so what happened was is we sold the business. I actually left the business in 2019 and then it was sold in 2020 and I became an EOS implementer. I became an implementer in March of 2020. That is not an ideal time to become a business consultant
Yeah.
for small business
Yeah.
at the beginning of the global pandemic. So I spent the next 2 years just building my EOS practice and writing this book. And so it's just been this hustle to do that. And now 2022 is all about just riding the wave of that success because I don't have to hustle and grind and it's a different pace. And I'm not really sure how to do it. I have space today even in my schedule and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, what do I do with this space? So I don't I don't have hobbies and it's something that I have on my list that I'm going to work on with my coach like
Hmm.
and I also have a Vistage group. I also highly recommend people joining Vistage or EO or some peer group. And in my peer group, one of the questions that we ask is how was 2021? What was your biggest disappointment? What was your biggest, success or achievement? And then what's one thing that we can help you with this year? And I told my group, ask me how I'm having fun. Like that's my number one thing this year is
Yeah.
like, I got to learn how to have fun. Like, what do I have scheduled or what's going on? And so I've already got some challenges back on that. So
That's great. I love hearing that. And again, the people that I know people in a broad swath of levels of success. And it's the people that are at the lowest level and the very highest level that have the happiest, like, personal lives, I guess.
uh-huh.
It's just funny. It's like they figure it out. I can't exactly explain it.
Yeah.
So you talked about being a member of EOS of Vestige. I haven't heard of Vestige. That's
Vistage.
interesting.
Yep.
Vistige. Sorry.
Vistage. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit more about that because I too have always been. I'm a member of a few different masterminds. One I actually just finished up meeting before this call, and I found it to be incredibly rewarding. And so I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about how that's played a role in your life and career.
So I think that we all know that you are the sum of the five people that you spend the most time with,
Yeah.
right? And so we have to, and a lot of times the people that we're spending the most time with, a lot of times we're the biggest fish in the pond. And so if we're the biggest fish in the pond, we're in the wrong pond.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first went to Vistage, it was in 2017. I had been to Tony Robbins Business Mastery. I had been to everything. I'd read every book. I'd done everything I could do to grow my business and myself, which of course you have to start with yourself. So businesses are just made up of a bunch of messy humans trying to figure it out. So you got to work on yourself if you're going to run a really great business.
Sure.
So I'd done all that work and I was like, okay, well, what's next? Like I still haven't figured it out. I always thought that the answer was like right around the corner. And then I have this rule that if I hear something 3 times, somebody recommends a book or tells me about an event or whatever it is, if I hear it 3 times, that's my cue that it's time to move on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what happened with Vistage. So I called Vistage, signed up, and it's what it is it's a roundtable discussion with other CEOs that have a similar business size, that have the same problems. And you come together and you work on your business every single month for a full day. And you're just working on your business, you're learning. They bring in speakers, it could be Lencioni type speakers. It could be like the art of negotiation. It could be taking an EQ assessment and learning about why that's important. There could be no speakers and you're just processing your issues together. But you develop these really strong networks and friendships of people that you admire, that you wish you were more like. They probably wish they were more like you because you've got a lot to bring to the table too. And so it's, when I got up there the first time, I was so intimidated. I was just terrified because I just imagined that every person in the room had an MBA, at least at a minimum, and that they all had far more experience than I did. I felt like an imposter. I felt like I didn't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stood up and I never read. I do a lot of speaking, but I never read from my notes. Like I like to really prepare, but I wanted to make sure that day that I read from my notes because I was that nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote about this actually in my book because it was such a big deal for me. And I just shared with my Vistage group that I didn't have a college education. I'd taken one college class and it was just too slow for me, but that I was a lifelong learner. I'm passionate about education, constantly learning. I just couldn't take that path. And like, I remember crying. I was like such a dork at the front of the room. I'm like, I felt like, and I told him, I'm like, I'm scared to death of you guys. Like you scare the shit out of me. And I can tell you about all of my accomplishments and how we've grown our business from X to Y and millions of dollars in revenue and blah, blah, blah. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to tell you what I don't know so that you can help me because I'm all about efficiency. And so really, I think that vulnerability is the fastest path to efficiency. Telling people what you don't know and what you need help with is far more useful. And the people that are there want to know that from you. So if you get the guts to join a group like that, and you should, because it will change your life, be as transparent as possible. And I know that's harder for guys. My brother and I were talking about it. My twin brother, he's in Vistage, and we were talking about this recently. It took him about a year in his group to really feel comfortable at that point. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's probably like jujitsu. Women go into jujitsu and everyone's like hugging and they're so warm and welcoming. And like going onto the mat with women is probably not the same thing as going onto the mat with a bunch of dudes. It's probably a very different experience. So when you feel comfortable, as soon as you can, to open up and be vulnerable and share what it is that you need help with, that's the best solution.
Yeah, that resonates with me so much. Even preparing for this, to start this show, not this particular episode, but this show, I come into it, I talk to guys and gals all the time that are way more successful than me or have a better education or whatever it may be. And I just have to keep repeating to myself, hey, that's your self-esteem. Because what's the most important thing that can walk into a room full of MBAs? Somebody that's as successful as they are and doesn't have an MBA. Right? That's the most interesting thing in the room because everybody else they can put their hands around it. They can put their arms around it. And it's the folks that are actually interested in expanding their bubble that are going to grasp onto that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so trust me, I can say those words out loud. I can write them on the wall all I want, but I don't feel it, whether it's, showing up and you talk about joining a group, the groups that I've always joined are fitness groups, which means everybody's jacked. So it's like, take the business acumen, take the social media presence, take the size of the business or whatever it is, and then multiply it by like abs. Right. It's like I walk in and I'm a little bit overweight and I'm like, not as fit as that. That guy was at the CrossFit Games. Like it's a totally different feeling. And what I've found is, again, the people in my life that I respect the most are the most unjudgmental, the most interested in your story, the most open and excited to hear something different than what it is that they assume to be true. And I think that if people like you or people like me or anybody listening to this show can just like really take some time and understand that, I think that would really serve people. Because it's like, it's the same as high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't remember my name. She remembers your name.
Yeah. It's funny because I said this when I became an EOS Implementer too. We go through like a boot camp together. Yeah. And it's funny how you get into a scenario like that. You don't know anybody else in the room or in Vistage or EO or whatever mastermind group or what you're talking about. We instantly turn into our 12-year-old junior high selves of like wanting to be accepted, wondering if we're enough, wondering if we're going to fit in, trying to figure out the hierarchy of the room, who's the most successful, we all do that. And so it's just a matter of keeping. So Shashin, who I was telling you about, my friend, he wrote a book called The Kid and the King. And it's about,
shout out The Kid and the King.
Yeah. Shout out The Kid and the King. It's on my bookshelf here. And it's about that, when you go, like, if you go, like you said, to the high school reunion, you go to the high school reunion and you were instantly brought back to that age or that time. Yeah. And it happens all throughout our careers and our personal lives where we turn into this 9-year-old little girl or little boy, and we're like dumbfounded by it. We're like, what the hell? Because if you were to put me in this other scenario, I'm a boss. You're like, like dominating. And then you get put in this scenario and you're just like this scared little girl or little boy, and you're like, I don't know if I fit in. And so it's just consciously understanding what's happening, deciding to, take back over and tell that little boy or little girl, it's, I got this. Like, I've got this. Like, my experienced version of me that knows the language, that knows what to do, has this, and just kind of stepping back into our power. That's what he's all about. And I think it's useful. I mean, when we're leaders at the front of a room, it's so important that we bring our A game. And that doesn't mean perfection or pretending to be something we're not, but just being our most authentic selves, most confident selves, not needing to prove anything, he calls them emotional cookies. Like, we don't need to get an emotional cookie from anybody here. We've already got everything we need inside. Like, that's what people need from us as leaders. They don't need the person who needs approval. And oh my God, I'm watching Succession right now. Have you seen Succession?
It's on my list. It got jumped a couple of times, but I really want to watch it.
Yeah, so I'm totally sucked into it. I don't love it, but like, I just have to know what happens. But it's funny because one of the sons in there, like, he just has this, they all do. They have this, you see the little kid versions of them showing up as adults in a business. And that's what we all do. And it's like needing approval, needing, to be liked and loved and wanted and whatever. And so the better we do at providing that for ourselves and showing up for ourselves, the better we're going to lead other people. I think it's important.
Hashtag keep going.
Hashtag keep going.
That's great. Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. I'm super excited that today's show is brought to you by the Global School of Entrepreneurship. Most practicing entrepreneurs cannot take 2 years away from their growing business to attend a full-time campus-based program or spend every weekend away from family and business for a couple of years. Finally, there's an accredited program specifically designed for you to work on and grow your business while completing your MBA. The GSE MBA complements the needs and schedules of someone actively engaged in an entrepreneurial venture while still covering the accredited curriculum expected from any MBA program. The Global School of Entrepreneurship offers a unique offering called the Mastermind to MBA program. It consists of 10 students who work together in a forum-style cohort and meet every other week for a year. The GSE MBA helps you develop skills in critical thinking and strategic planning. Students also develop competencies in leadership, decision-making, and communication with both employees as well as the important stakeholders in your business. You will be exposed to world-class academics and fascinating guest lecturers. You'll work on your business while working in your business. Students are guided by real-world entrepreneurs with decades of experience starting and scaling businesses just like yours. Best of all, I'm beyond proud to announce that the Global School of Entrepreneurship has agreed to offer one Spear and Clover listener a scholarship to join an upcoming Mastermind to MBA cohort. They are looking for someone just like you to bring a unique perspective to the program, and they are accepting applications right now. To learn more and to apply, simply go to www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Don't miss this opportunity to level yourself up and surround yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs just like you. Once again, to apply for the GSE MBA Spear and Clover Scholarship, simply visit www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free, that's right, free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've talked a little bit about this. You're being an EOS implementer. What do you bring to an entrepreneur when you work with them as an EOS implementer?
So I bring in, so EOS is EOS. So we are all, there's like over 400 EOS implementers across the globe. Every single person teaches EOS. So that's a system that we come in with. As a facilitator, what we're doing is we don't come in as the experts of your business. You know your business better than we do. In fact, the less I know about the business, the more interesting it is for me as an implementer because I'm even more objective. Like, I don't know, it's your business, but my job as a facilitator is to ask really great questions to really extract the wisdom that you have in the room among you as a team to sort of mediate. Like, we don't have a whistle or anything, but we just notice what's going on. And kind of like, I used to have a counselor and she would tell me, like, I would talk for like 10 minutes and she's like, okay, Mary, so at the end of this, like, here's the thread that's going through everything that you're saying. So as a facilitator, as a third party in the room, we're able to notice and observe things that people that are inside the system can't see and recognize. And then what my unique flavor is that, first of all, I like to have fun. Like, I know that this is really serious stuff that we're doing. People's lives are on the line. Millions of dollars are oftentimes on the line. I totally get that. And if we can't have fun working on our business and just laughing at ourselves from time to time and just bullshitting from time to time, and if I can't cuss and if we can't laugh, I'm not going to be the right implementer. So every implementer is a little bit different in their flavor and style. And then I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my own personal and professional development. And I can't help but bring that into the room whenever I'm working with a leadership team. So I may bring in something that I learned from Tony Robbins' Business Mastery. I may bring in something that I learned from Shashin. I may bring in something that, you know, I'm constantly like, I'm listening to Masters of Scale by Reid Hoffman or How I Built This by Guy Raz, or, you know, I think other podcasts are good too for perspective. So TED Radio Hour. Oh my gosh, there's one I really want to tell you about. That's Hidden Brain by Shankar Vedantam. You cannot get enough perspective into the old tank so that in the moment that your team needs it, you've got just this perfect analogy or this perfect way of helping them see something that they can't see.
I couldn't agree more. I just love that. So what do you do? So I have not been an EOS implementer. However, my former business was very much modeled on EOS, as well as some of the work by Coach Alex Charfin. But a lot of it's very, very similar. A lot of crossover, Tony Robbins, that type of stuff. What do you do when you're helping somebody, let's say, come up with core values or come up with a mission statement or really get their arms around what makes their business great, and they're wrong? In other words, if you've ever had anybody who's like clearly a visionary and is jumping all over the place, and they're like, well, our thing is discipline and stability. Because this has happened to me, and I'm curious if you have an answer on that.
Well, okay, so it depends on who came up with the answer.
Sure.
So a lot of times the ceiling in a business is the fact that the visionary and their number two are the ones that are coming up with everything, and they're not getting the feedback of the proper team. So the first question is, who's at the table answering the questions in the first place? We've got to make sure that we have the right people in the right seats before we even start answering those kinds of questions. So in EOS, what we do is we have Focus Day. And on Focus Day, that's the first session day that we go through. And it is all about right people, right seats. And really what we're doing is we're teaching traction disciplines, things that are going to help you get traction right away in the business before we move into vision. Because if we don't get that right, the vision isn't going to be right. So who's at the table? What are they saying? We've got to get that right first before we start tackling vision. So I'd say if it doesn't go right, there's that. There's also the possibility you have the right people and that we got it wrong. And I have a client that's had that experience with core values. And what's interesting is one of the employees called and said, EOS isn't working. And I'm like, tell me more. And, what they said was that our values, what we're professing as a leadership team, the feedback that we're getting throughout the organization is that that's not our core values. And what I told him is, look, then EOS is working because this is a two-way street of communication about who we are and what's actually happening. And so it's creating the frustration, the agitation, because it'd be one thing if you were professing it over here and nobody ever knew your values and you weren't ever really talking about them or trying to live by them. Now you're bringing them in and you're making them a regular part of the conversation. And so it's working because people can actually call you out on it. And we need that. It's a two-way, street for communication. And so it's definitely something to be worked on. And it's just an issue. The other thing we say in EOS is that everything is just an issue. If somebody says they're not a right fit for the company anymore, that's just an issue. If somebody says they want to move up or they want a promotion or they don't like someone else, everything is just an issue that can be solved. But we need to kind of remove some of the emotion from those issues and really just make it a little more black and white. That's something that I love about EOS that some of my clients, I would say my non-target market clients didn't love. They're like, oh, EOS is so black and white. It is. And I love that because especially when you're coming from my business, like a family owned business, and you've got all this history and all this stuff, EOS, when you pour all of that into EOS, it just makes everything very black and white. And some people don't like that. They want some gray wiggle room. And if that's what they're looking for, EOS it's not going to be a good fit. It is black and white. And because of it, the results are profound.
Yeah, and I've seen that over and over again through conversations like these, but also even at a smaller level. I work with brick and mortar gym, or I have worked with brick and mortar gym owners, and a lot of them didn't implement traction per se, but they all read it. I'll make sure the ones that were paying attention, I had them all read it, and people take away a lot from that. So coming back to the book a little bit, who is the book written for? What is the message? Like, what is the drum you're beating with hashtag keep going?
Yeah, so I'd say that the book is for either aspiring or existing entrepreneurial leaders. So if you are sitting in a marketing support role right now and you have greater aspirations, it's for you. If you are sitting on the executive leadership team right now and you're trying to figure out where you're going in your life and in your business, it's for you. You could be the visionary of an organization and you see this and you go, I don't know what I'm complaining about. I've got some work to do. It's for you. So it's really, the demographic is aspiring or existing entrepreneurial leaders. And the drum that I'm beating is really, I'm sharing my story more to be a mirror for other people to see what's possible in their own life. In fact, that was going to be like one of the cover ideas was like, you see yourself. The whole point of me telling my story is not to tell my story. I actually don't think it's that interesting. I'm kind of tired of it actually, but other people do. And what they do is if you can see yourself in my story and you see what's possible, when you see each time that like I got kicked in the teeth, not literally, but like, or punched in the gut and I got back up and I figured it out, losing everything over and over again, or I've had 13 eye surgeries and I'm mostly blind in my left eye. And like, all the thing, gaining 100 pounds, losing 100 pounds, almost losing my marriage along the way, almost having to file for bankruptcy, raising a family with 3 kids and no cars because we lost everything. We lost our house and everything. Like all those things, somewhere in this story, you can relate to some part of that. And you can see how each time I pick myself back up, create a vision for what's possible, close the gap consistently on that vision and just execute. So that's the first part of the book. And then the second part of the book is the 7 steps. Like, how do you do this? How do you create vision for your life? Something I didn't realize until recently is that most people aren't visionary. Only about 14% of people function with this visionary filter where they see things, they picture things. So what I wanted to do was share my process for how I create vision in my own life. It's something that I do naturally. And a lot of visionaries are probably like me. I have come from a lot of trauma in my childhood, some sexual abuse and some stuff, and some messy stuff that isn't even in this book that I don't know that will ever come out in a book. I don't even know that it matters. The point is that when you are a kid and you're going through really hard things, you tend to operate in vision. You tend to operate in a way that helps you imagine a better future so that you can get through right now. So a lot of visionaries, if you relate as a visionary, it's something to look at. It's something to look at, look back into your childhood. It doesn't have to be as traumatic as physical abuse or sexual. It could just be a parent that passed away. It could be, something that you went through as a kid, and your mechanism, your coping mechanism was to envision a better future, how you were going to come through this some way, because that's a natural part of my brain that I tap into all the time. My husband, who is my polar opposite, thank God, he's my perfect puzzle piece. And my polar opposite, he's like, wait a second, wait. Because we're like creating goals together. He's like, so 5 years from now, we're creating this goal for 5 years from now, and you just name what it is that you want, like what it is that you see, and that's it. Like that's the process. And it was really helpful for me when I was writing the book, because I thought everybody could do that. Like I thought everybody had that mechanism, and they don't. So what I did is I created a way to tap into that, so that everybody, whether you're a visionary or not, you can see your future. What is it that what is ideal for you? And I think that's really important to do in our lives as entrepreneurial leaders, because, one thing we say in EOS is that we're going to help you get everything you want out of your business. That's awesome. Most people's identity is 100% wrapped up in their business, and they don't know who they are or what they want without that business. And so what we need to do is tease that apart and figure out what is it that you want for your life, so that you can get that from your business. But most people don't know what that is first. So the point of this is to really say, what do I want for my life? How do I create that vision for myself? How do I communicate that vision to my spouse or my partner? Because that's the other problem, is that we may have vision that we haven't even shared yet. And then how do we back into that on a personal level? And how does your business serve that? I think that's the important thing.
I think that sounds fantastic. I think, to your point, I think if you walk up and ask 10 people, what is it that you want from your life? 10 regular people, 10 entrepreneurs, 10 anybody's, I think almost all of them are going to look at you like you're crazy, or rather really struggle to come up with like a compelling and like rock type answer. And I think that if your book helps people to do that, I haven't gotten a chance to get my hands on one yet, but I would love to read at some point. But if
I'll tell you, in the book, I actually write out what that experience was like for me the first time. And it sucked. It sounds fun. Like, oh, that'd be fun to imagine what's possible for my life. Doesn't that sound fun? Until you sit down to do it, and you're coming up with like really generic answers. Like, I think I want more money. I think I want a better relationship. I think I want to be closer to my kids. And you're like, well, this is harder. This is harder than I thought. Yeah. And the secondary issue, which is, what happens if I create this vision? I want to be a millionaire. So you start getting more specific. I want to have $5 million in the bank, or $500,000, whatever it is, doesn't even matter the number. What if I set that goal and I discover I'm not the kind of person that can get to it? That's the scary thing.
Yeah.
And that's enough to keep people from doing it. The second scariest thing is that, let's say that your goal is so far away from the life that you're living right now. The odds are that goal, and if you start to achieve it and you start to accomplish it, the odds are that's going to create a gap in your relationships if everyone else isn't on board with you. And so that's the other reason that people stop. They stop because we are wired for love and connection. I learned that from Tony Robbins. That's our number one human need, is love and connection. And when we are positioning ourselves to be excluded from our tribe, could be our family, it could be our group of friends, and people are like, oh, look at you, all bougie. Oh, you're too good to hang out with us now. Or, whatever those things are. Or you start getting fit. Let's say you're 75 pounds overweight and you start getting fit. Of course, probably most of the people in your life are also 40, 70 pounds overweight. And now you start getting fit, and they're like, oh, and you start getting excluded. It's enough to bring your subconscious around to be like, no, we like love. I like love better than being fit. And so that's your subconscious saboteurs that are going to come into play. They're going to keep you from hitting your goals. And so I talk about a lot of that in the book too. Like, how do you prepare for that? You really have to start preparing for that at the beginning, because you will start to hit these really uncomfortable things once you set out for that. So it sounds great. Oh yeah, let me create my dream life. Sure. But let's like mentally prepare you for all the things that are coming. And it's not that you have to not be around those people anymore, but you do need to start to bring new people into your life, like the people that you're working out with at your CrossFit gym. Or it's not that you're saying those people are, your previous people are excluded. You just need to start getting some love from people who see you for the potential that you have to be, and, you know, bring that into your life too.
Yeah, I agree. And also I've always had this maybe in a professional sense, at least since the military, but in my personal life, I've gotten a lot better at having not even hard conversations, but just like transparent, honest conversations. So sometimes I'll have those moments, right? Where maybe the people around me aren't as supportive or whatever. And I've gotten better as I've gotten older at being like, it sounds like you're not happy in your current job. Like I'll say that to somebody when they're talking and they'll be like, whoa. And I'm like, I'm not trying to ruin your life, but have you thought about quitting your job? And I've just gotten better and better at that because of exactly what you're saying. And you also hit a point that I think everybody can resonate for. How many people are out there working towards a goal that isn't even their goal, right? And maybe they know it or maybe they don't, but so many people, if I just had X, usually that's money or prestige or some position. I was very fortunate to not be quite good enough when I had a corporate job to where I had space to see that I didn't want the boss's job, right? I think if I had been better at it and people had been patting me on the back and like, wow, you're going to be amazing at this, maybe I wouldn't have had the clarity and the space to have seen it as early as I did. But thank God that I did, because it completely changed the course of my path. So Mari, there's two questions that I ask everybody who comes on the show. I'm very excited to hear your answers. The first question is, if you had access to unlimited capital, what would you do to profitably grow your current businesses?
I would do more outreach and marketing. I love that mechanism of the business and figuring that out and getting the message out to as many people as possible. So I think that's what I would work on. And then, of course, operational efficiency. In my former business, I worked on operational efficiency first and then marketing, because if you don't have your systems and processes down, and people are going to have an inconsistent experience. So like, great job, you brought in 3,000 people and each of them had a different experience working with you. That's not a recipe for success. So I guess let me reprioritize operational efficiencies first, and systems and that, for where we are now, and then marketing and growing, and definitely like the right people. Yeah. I miss having an executive leadership team so much. I am not a great solopreneur, it turns out. And so it's been very challenging to not have people to go, okay, here's my vision, here's how we're going to do it. And then they take it and they make it even better. I miss having an executive leadership team.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat where I just have exited 2 different businesses in the last couple of years. And this is the first time in 14 years or something where I didn't have clients, partners, or anybody. And so there's nobody that I'm accountable to or that's accountable to me. And I've found that it feels a little weird. I feel I'm a little less, I'm much more likely to take it easy on myself than I am I would never let somebody that was a stakeholder down, right? I literally just have been talking about that today. Really great answer. By the way, to your point about outreach before processes are super important. But you know what makes everything easier? A big pile of money from a bunch of new clients, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But you said I had unlimited capital, so.
Yeah, you do, right. So the second question is, if you had to give up all of the businesses that you have experience with and you had to start a new business, what do you think that business would be?
I would like to own some kind of a super simple shop on a beach somewhere. Cool. So like it could be a taco shop, or like something where I get to go hang out in the ocean majority of my time. I wouldn't have aspirations for bigger and more. I would have aspirations. You were talking earlier about like there's this bottom and there's this top, and then like everything's shit in between. It's like a shit sandwich. It's just like everything's hard in between.
Yeah.
I'd like to get to the top, make all the money I can, and then go live this like super, super simple life. I don't know that you were calling everything in between a shit sandwich, but
but you're not wrong. It's struggle. It's toil, right? I mean, what's funny is, just so many references I could say and won't that say that after like 70 grand, it doesn't really matter. Like everybody's just as happy, right? I think if more people were willing, I think it's the same problem that I've always struggled with fitness and nutrition is like the information's there. You know that if you just show up to the gym every day and somebody leads you through something, you'll eventually be very, very fit. And you know that if you just eat a certain way most days, you'll be very healthy. We know this. We know we feel better. We know we save money. We know we look better. We know we have more energy and our brain works better. And yet we don't do it. And it's like if you asked that guy who owns a $2 million company that's really struggling to get up into that, let's say $10 million range or whatever it may be, doesn't matter. That person probably has everything that they needed, but it's too hard maybe to look in the mirror. Maybe it sounds like your book may help people to do that.
Yeah, I hope so. I like what you said earlier about realizing what success looks like for you.
Yeah.
So my first experience with this was I was at a Tony Robbins event and Tony asked some guys, like, how much money do you need to never have to work again? And the guy just completely like shouted out a number. And I was like, how much? I'm like, I have no idea. And so the guy was like, I need $20 million. And Tony's like, okay, what is it that you want? What is it you're looking for in your life? And he's like, I want a private jet. And so I was literally writing down, like, for the first time ever, I'm like, private jet. I'd never had that thought before.
Yeah.
So I was like, what do other people want? So I wrote down private jet. And then Tony said, okay, do you want the private jet or do you want the lifestyle? Because owning the jet and keeping it the hangar and the people and the food and like all that stuff, pilots, whatever, or do you just want the lifestyle of being able to go like, I want to book a flight and I just want to be able to leave from my a private jet, you know? So just creating that distinction of like, what do you actually want? Why do you want it? But then when I started thinking about it for my own life, I had written down private jet and then I got back home and I was like working through some of my goals. And I was like, I have no desire. That's not anything that I want for my own life, at least not at that stage. I don't know if I haven't checked in on it lately, but like, and it could change, you can evolve. But that was my first experience with recognizing the gap between other people pursuing things for the sake of pursuit and just sort of accidentally following people down a path versus me defining what does success look like for me? What am I trying to accomplish? And I think that it's so important to figure that out for yourself, because if success was moving to a beach and finding, maybe I don't even need to have the shop. Maybe I just want the shop because I just like people and I just like interacting with people, but I don't even need it per se to, support my family or anything like that. That would be like a dream come true. That would be ultimate success for me, which I have to tell Shasheen next time I get on my coaching call, because I think that's like our next question.
Yeah.
What do you want?
Well, I think that's so insightful and I think wise is the right word to recognize when you don't even want the thing. My wife and I had been talking for years about having a second home. And then when that became possible for us, we were like, why? Why would we? Airbnb exists. I'll go to 20 second homes and I'll spend $3,000 a year, traveling to wherever the hell I ever want to go. Same with the private. I mean, the private jet. Look, if you're in that conversation, maybe it's a little different. But for me, it's, having, expensive cars or whatever. I mean, a lot of that stuff, you really think about it and you're like, what is the guy or guy or gal who has that thing? What would they say? Would they say that it was, all sunshine and roses or no? Mari, this has been really awesome. I'm super excited to see your book. One last time, tell us where we can find you and where we can find your book. And we'll also include everything in the links.
It's so great to be on video because then you can actually see my name and how it's spelled and pronounced, unlike all the radio interviews I'm doing where I'm like, it's Mari Tautimes and I have to spell it out, but it's maritautimes.com. You can find my book on Amazon. I'll send you the link for that. The audio version will be out, I think, mid to end February. If you're like me and you wouldn't ever pick up a book and read it, I do reluctantly.
I'm an audiobook guy. You're in a safe place.
Yeah, I'm totally audio. I got to be doing something else while I'm reading. So yeah, Amazon, if you look up hashtag keep going, should be there, Mari Tautimes, or go to my website. You can find it there. Yeah, that's it.
Mari, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure. I'd love to have you back on. We're going to be doing some sort of roundtables when we have folks come on to talk about certain
topics.
I'd love that. Yeah.
Anytime.
And then the last thing is, I don't say this to everybody, you got to have a podcast or some sort of show. I think you have a really great voice and I think you have a great energy. I think a lot of people would benefit from it.
Thank you. I actually do. I have a podcast.
Then I got to do some more research.
No, it's funny because speaking of marketing, like I don't even promote it, but I have a podcast, Forbes. It's published through Forbes audio, whatever. And I interviewed Dan Tyre, who's the sales director at HubSpot. I interviewed Chris Ronzio, founder of Trainual. Shashin, got one with him. So that way you can hear my amazing coach. So yes, I have that. I appreciate that.
And we'll have the link for that below as well. All right. Well, again, Mari, thank you so much for your time. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks so much, Jason.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.